Felicia, welcome on Cast of Creators.
Thanks.
Thank you for joining us.
I'm excited to be here.
Well,
it's my first podcast.
Oh,
wow.
amazing.
Amazing. This is a great place to start.
It is because we're actually tiny home buffs, Casey and I.
Ooh.
Yes.
We spend a lot of time tossing tiny home ideas back and forth, funny enough.
Yes. And we've been following this tiny home movement and design and different things for a long time.
Well, that's amazing and very opportune. We just launched Arhome.
Yes.
Did you see
I
that?
saw. Yeah. I was at the interior design show and I was like,
oh, you came?
Yes.
Amazing.
I was there. I am obsessed.
Great.
Tell us more about it, please.
Yeah, so we'll get into Arcana and the whole journey, but one of the most common pieces of feedback we received from guests was, we loved staying in your cabin. Are they for sale? And so we took some time, we thought about it, and we launched this year Arhome by Arcana, Arhome.
Yes.
And that essentially is our platform to sell our completely prefabricated cabins that were purpose-built for immersion in nature and really for a two-person guest suite-like experience. And we'll sell them directly to individuals. So tiny home buffs, people looking to add something to their property that gives them an opportunity for themselves to either escape and spend time in nature, or can be used as a really nice short-term rental and income opportunity.
For sure.
And it's been so incredible getting ourselves into that space.
Yeah,
you guys probably
bet.
know this already, but the prefabricated home, just the movement around that is so interesting and fascinating. And we built that way because for what Arcana needed, it made the most sense to have something completely built in factory.
Right.
So we put them in remote locations. You don't want to have to build on those sites. But it just really is a big unlock for a lot of people to know that they can buy something for a fixed price that's completely assembled, interiors, everything. It gets delivered to your house. We drive it down the road.
Yeah.
And you can be sleeping in it the same night.
So
think about how revolutionary that is from a
it's
construction
like your instant
standpoint,
home.
right?
It's like, okay, here's your home.
Yeah.
I've actually had a number of people who own homes who have space for an additional office, or they're thinking of putting something in their backyard. This is also magnified since COVID. I think it's the demand's gone up since COVID. And they're like, Nell, what could we do with this? You got any ideas? So this is really in demand. I think that a lot of people are going to want this.
It is. And I mean, you think about Toronto and
Home prices
and housing shortage and all the things that, sort of from the macroeconomic standpoint that Canadians are facing. And like I said, I think this type of construction is completely the future. Our home absolutely has interesting applications from a potentially, an addition to someone's residential property. It really depends on the property and where that person's located. But it's such a wonderful solution through our home and through the other tiny home builders and folks that are doing things in prefabricated construction to give to people. It's, I think, the future. I have no question.
So if you're purchasing an Arhome unit, are they all the same? Is there different things you can add? Because I've been inside and I love especially how the outlets are, the washroom is, the closet. I was in there and I was like, I don't want to leave.
Amazing.
So is there different levels of that you could buy?
Yeah. So, I mean, if you take it back, why did we start selling our home? So we have been at this now for almost 3 years. We started with Arcana hospitality concept. First and foremost, we wanted to create a space and a place for people to reconnect with nature and in the process find themselves. And this cabin really became this really wonderful exploration of how do we find that vessel, right? That really facilitates that journey on property, but isn't intrusive. And we refined it so that inside is really everything you would want and nothing you don't. So to your point, it's really been through a number of iterations. It's our third model of the cabin, and it has absolutely really demonstrated its ability to serve that use case, which again is two people accommodation and again, a guest suite, weekend getaway. And so from that standpoint, the Arhome unit is the Arhome unit. Right. So we're serving a really specific use case with that product, and we don't have a infinite number of customizations because then you start to lose the sort of value proposition. It's a fixed price, and again, for that use case, it's excellent.
Where do you build it?
Oh, good
Yeah,
question.
we build it in Burlington, Ontario, Maine.
Wonderful.
Cool.
Yeah.
Wonderful. And I guess design too.
So we designed the Arhome unit, and our founding team, one of our partners is an architect. He's based out of Vancouver. His name is Michael Leckie. His practice is Leckie Studios. They're amazing. So again, the design is part of what we bring to the table. And because we've been operating Arcana for the last 3 years, we've had guests stay in the cabin almost every night, and we've taken all that feedback. So not just from a guest experience standpoint, but also from an operations standpoint. Right. So you want something that obviously is incredible for the people that are staying in it, but you also want something that you can easily turn over, especially if you're using it as an income generating property. And so the Arhome cabin is really that complete, set of learnings that we had all incorporated. We also worked with an advisor from the Four Seasons.
Oh, nice.
So again, the interiors are really that 5-star luxury experience, and all through the lens of our design first and, architect-led vision.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, it's really rare to be able to get that much feedback before you build a product. I mean, who else has been able to do that, especially in that space? Really nobody.
Well, our background, my background at least in particular, came from the tech world. So, for us, it's very much put a pilot out there, MVP, collect feedback, iterate. And so, we had the chance to do that like IRL in real world with our cabin through Arcana. So it's been incredible, but to me it's like a no-brainer. Like, of course you'd want to do that. If I'm going to sell you this solution that I'm telling you is for this thing, well, I better have proof that this is a solution for that thing.
And I've noticed that I remember when you first launched, as someone who's like, I saw the Instagram and I'm like following along, but those Arcana units are booked. Like, they've been booked almost like I looked at, going, or Sean and I to go, maybe for a weekend or a couple of days. But it's almost like you said, almost booked every night.
Yeah, and it's been incredible. We have certainly exceeded our expectations with our sort of MVP that we put out to the world. And we've seen really incredible occupancy. And again, I think more meaningfully, the guest feedback after people stay. I mean, that's really what continues to motivate and drive us forward. People are not just coming because they see this beautiful mirrored cabin. They are then leaving having felt something, and they feel some sort of different, which again was the entire premise for why we wanted to start Arcana in the first place. Spend some time in nature and feel better.
Yeah.
And how many properties are there now for Arcana?
So we have that property, we call it internally, now it's external to the world, pilot, our pilot property, and then we're developing another property. And our vision for this is to really have dozens of properties. Mm-hmm. So we're looking at expanding, across Ontario and US and West Coast. Even being at the IDS show, we had some groups like, can you take these cabins overseas? And would you guys want to build something there? And I mean, the answer is yes.
Like 100%.
Yeah, let's go.
Sign here.
Yeah. Someone was like, I got some land in Greece. I'm like, okay, tell me more. I'd love to go spend some time over there. So the opportunity to get folks who live in cities to spend more time in natural surrounding areas really isn't limited to Ontario. Ontario is incredible because there's so much beauty and nature accessible within 2 to 3 hours. Yeah. But the same can be said for so many places.
Totally.
So how many acres is a minimum size site?
Yeah, so we ideally look for 30 acres, which gives us plenty of space to put cabins, but have them, laid out far enough, but also ensure that we've got some access to private trails and things that guests can actually immerse themselves in while they're there during their stay. It sort of depends on the property, because if you got a smaller property, but it was in close proximity to a national park or, something else. Yeah.
I heard there might be something coming to Muskoka where like Nelson and I are, seasoned cottagers and spend a lot of time in that area. Is that true?
Yeah. So, Arcana means secrets and mystery.
Okay.
So I think part of our secret sauce is certainly keeping certain elements of the experience, for guests only.
Yes.
And
you do a good job at that.
Yeah.
Through your sites, you do a good job.
Yeah.
At that
But
too.
for us, honestly, any area outside of Toronto that's within a 2 to 3 hour drive, our criteria for properties is they have to be supernaturally awesome. So it's a bit subjective, but that means a place place where you could go and really immerse yourself in nature. From the picture window, we guarantee guests that they'll have an undisturbed view of nature.
Yes,
and
I
that's
love
really
that.
what's critical. Like when you wake up, it should be you and the natural surroundings. We also like to use the phrase "in solitude together." So, of course, there's other groups on site, and we think building community and, again, having those connection points with like-minded people is really important. But you also want to have the place and the time to reflect on yourself or your relationship with your partner, whatever may be, the reason that you're venturing into, a 2 or 3 night stay in nature. And so for us, again, having that sense of privacy is important. But there's so many locations, Muskoka, Kawarthas, Niagara, Prince Edward County. I mean, you name it. There's lots of opportunities as we continue to grow.
Did you grow up cottaging?
It's a good question. So I actually grew up in Chicago.
Okay.
I recently became Canadian. For so many years, I would say I'm an aspiring Canadian. But I took my citizenship oath, I think in October. So it's still pretty new.
Welcome.
Great.
Thank you. Proud Canadian. So I didn't grow up cottaging because we didn't use that term in Chicago. But I did grow up spending my summers at an overnight camp in Wisconsin that was in the woods. And I did that from the age of 9 until I was like 21. So I ended up being like a camper and then a counselor. Cool. So for
Even I didn't stay that long.
But for me, that was a lot of the reasons that I was connected to, building this Arcana project in the first place. I remember those summers in the woods and, completely untethered at that point from, anything.
Glory days.
But
Or a phone.
Or a phone. I mean, we didn't have phones. But I guess at some point in that journey we did. Yeah, right. But I remember so distinctly feeling a version of myself that I almost only felt, in those woods, in those moments. And I think so much of the response to Arcana has been people rediscovering that connection to nature and how it makes them feel. Yeah. And the good news is the science around why you feel good in nature is so rich. So it's not just like, I think I feel better. There's things that are physiologically happening to you that are so beneficial to personal mental health and physical health that, again, it was our vision to really build a place where people who are in the city can re-access that.
And with the pilot property, on the in the space, are there? So you have the Arcana cabins. Are there any other amenity type things that people can do while they're there?
Yes. So we built the whole experience through the lens of self-guided well-being programming.
I love that.
Yeah. So
I wish camp was like that. My camp wasn't like that. That was my biggest grievance with camp.
I mean, listen, camp serves a very specific and kind of different use case and purpose. This, from its inception, was really about giving people an opportunity to have their own self-guided wellness journey. Mm-hmm. And so that means on property, there's everything from sound that we utilize within the cabin. So we work with a sound practitioner in upstate New York. He's created custom binaural audio journeys that guests can, in their cabin, they press a button and the cabin sort of starts to envelope you in the sound. And you may never have done sound journeys or had any interest in sound meditation, but this is like a zero risk type of way to sort of press a button and experience something. So there's moments like that. Similarly, we do the same thing for a sleep journey. So at the end of your, day, you can sort of kick back, press a button, and you've got this really interesting audio guide to help you fall into just the deepest, most delicious, wonderful sleep. So that's available on property. We also have a hydrotherapy circuit on property. So sauna, cold plunge,
That's my favorite. Yeah.
I mean, it's great. Do you practice it on a routine?
Yes, I spent some time in a frozen lake this weekend, about 2 hours north of the city. But I have a galvanized stock tank on our roof and a hot tub. Seasoned cold plunger for about 4 years now.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, my favorite is going in the frozen lake though, when you have to cut an ice hole like a chainsaw or like a blade, and then you go in. Like a crazy person.
No, I get it.
I love it.
Do you cold plunge?
No. Although
Are you open to it?
I'm open to it.
Okay.
I just don't have a convenient way to incorporate it in my routine. But I have the other elements of, I've got a pool in my routine and a sauna in my routine and a hot tub in my routine. I just don't have the cold one.
Seems like an easy add-on.
I've got to figure that out.
But that's what I'll say. We try to create these moments that you experience on property, but that you can replicate when you get back home to your life in the city.
Right.
So I remember we had one guest stay with us who, again, was so enamored by their experience with the cold plunge. Like you, had not really done much in cold plunge. And they had such an incredible time. And they started simply making their shower cold.
Yeah.
Yes.
And again, that's like a really easy thing you can do for a couple minutes when you get home, and it can be life-changing for some people. So the idea is that, okay, there's these incredible things that you can experience only on property, but they should give you some tools that you can then start to create an easy-to-follow routine when you're back in the city.
It inspires you to make positive life changes that you do there, and then you're like, well, I should do this when I go home.
Yeah.
And then, it helps you create new routines that are better for your well-being and your mind and body, and I love that.
Well, that's kind of what happened to you, because a lot of this for you started with COVID, being in nature and retreating to Muskoka.
At our cottage in Muskoka, and it was quite lonely, and I started doing cold plunges, and I started working out a lot and eating really healthy and making elaborate meals because I had time and spending a lot. I became like a forest lady. Like, I always had short hair. I let my hair grow long. I was like this woman of the woods, and that really made a big difference in my life, because now I find, since making those changes, I'm more of a calmer person, and I'm more in tune with that wellness part of my life. So I'm all over this.
And that makes a ton of sense, because what the studies show is you spend time in nature, your cortisol levels go down, you feel less stressed, you ruminate less negative emotions, you're more creative, you experience awe more meaningfully. Well, how wonderful is that? Like, who doesn't want to experience awe?
Yeah, absolutely.
And it also opens you up to create more connections, not just with nature yourself, but with other humans. So it's so powerful. So it's, again, something that you intuitively know and you experience. And then I love to hear that you're doing things in the city that help replicate some of that.
Totally.
Yeah.
Now, the team that you're building Arcana with, you've worked with before, right? Successfully worked with before.
Yeah. That's part of the fun, right? Like, you want to build good things with good people, right? So a number of us worked together on Tokyo Smoke. So we started Tokyo Smoke, 2016.
Cool.
It was a crazy, wild journey.
Yeah.
Built a really strong, amazing team. We went through sort of all the life cycles of a startup, from, an idea and working in a garage with a few people to our first coffee shop, which
Where was that again? The first coffee
on
shop?
Stafford.
On Stafford, okay.
Yeah.
Like just west of Kensington?
West of Kensington. Yeah, more like Niagara and Queen.
Yeah, Queen and Niagara.
Yeah.
I know that. I remember.
Yeah. But we had the opportunity to really build that. We took that company public, and then we sold it to Canopy Growth. So in the process, we built a really incredible, talented team with people from, Holt Renfrew and Lululemon, and we took people in from CPG companies, and, it was a really diverse, talented group of individuals. And a lot of folks stayed on after the acquisition, so we were acquired by Canopy Growth. And again, over time, I think a number of us kept gravitating back towards one another, and let's do something together again. So feel incredibly fortunate that a number of the team members we have at Arcana were part of that Tokyo Smoke journey.
And how did you settle on this idea in this business? Did anybody specific have the idea, or how did it come up?
Yeah, I think it was certainly like a group collaborative effort. The red thread was really wanting to continue to lead with design, to create brand and community around a concept that had the power to transform. That was really what Tokyo Smoke was about. Now cannabis being normalized maybe seems obvious. It didn't when we started, right? And so for us, it was like, well, that's interesting, and cannabis is interesting as a tool in mental health and has the ability to transform people. Nature in many ways has way less side effects.
Yeah.
And equally, if not even, more powerful.
It's maybe more immersive, and you can, get high on life when you're breathing in the forest and breathing in that forest bathing, or just taking it all in.
100%. And so how could we lean into design, community, and again, this time instead of focusing on cannabis as that tool for folks, focus on nature as that tool.
Mm-hmm.
And you then, how did you, come up with the idea and get the first property and had that all unfold?
Yeah. So we were fortunate in that one of the founders of Arcana, who also I worked with at Tokyo Smoke, he has a piece of land, and part of that land was accessible to us to utilize for this pilot project. So that's really where it all started. It's a beautiful piece of land. It's in close proximity to a really beautiful set of hiking trails, and that was the natural place for us to start. And again, I think, for us, we had the canvas, and the canvas is so important. Like, let's not get it twisted. Nature does so much of the lifting of the Arcana experience. The way that we design the experience and the programming that we add on top is absolutely the secret sauce. But the fact that the Four Seasons presents this incredible landscape for people to immerse themselves in and changes every season, so much of that is what makes the magic happen for guests. And so for us, that's where we started. But it did give us the confidence that there are so many places. Like this property, it's not near any big major attraction. It doesn't even have a water body. So that's sometimes what people think, you've got to be on a lake. You don't need to be on a lake, right? I mean, this is such a specific use case. You are there to reconnect with yourself. Yeah. Don't get me wrong; bodies of water are amazing, so we do love them. But it's equally magical and awe-inspiring to be, in a dense, mature forest in the middle of the winter. Where it feels like Narnia, in the middle of nowhere. Yeah. And go on a hiking trail and do things that are at that slower pace in a beautiful environment with clean, fresh air. That's all you need.
How many Arhomes are on this first plot of
First property has 3. So we started with what we call Cabin Zero. So that was the very first attempt at creating this experience. And that was actually built in a shipping container. Cool. And we built it in British Columbia and sort of drove it all the way across country. Cool. It's a really beautiful unit. So I'd say that model was really architect-led. So all the decisions were made through an architect's eye, which creates this beautiful sculptural product. When we started to use it in practice, it didn't have all of the operational, efficiencies that you would want. Like the simplest example is the bed is actually lengthwise against the picture window. So anyways, it's a beautiful layout, but you can't make the bed. Like if you go that corner that's near the window, you're breaking your nails and your fingers. And, okay, so it may be beautiful, but that's not practical. So then we created our second version of the cabin, built in Hamilton, actually, with a tiny home builder. And that cabin is great. It's more operationally efficient. I'd say it swung more in that direction. And so the Arhome cabin that we're now taking going forward for the properties in the future and then also available for sale is that really nice marriage of design and operational and functionality, right? And that's what's incredible about the Arhome product.
So the third one is basically the Arhome that you're selling.
The third one is the Arhome that we're selling.
Okay, cool. Yeah. And how many do you have for sale?
So we have, going into IDS, we had 25 that could be delivered within 8 weeks. Mm-hmm. We'll sell more than that, but those have a nice short lead time. We are down to only a few of those.
That's awesome.
IDS was,
Congratulations.
IDS was amazing. It was awesome. We are so thrilled at the reception. There was basically a line in front of the cabin the entire time we were there.
Amazing.
And so that's really, really awesome. But again, these are made in factory. The time to build is not that long. This is a pretty automated process. So beyond those initial 25 units, we'll still sell our homes with about a 16-week lead time.
Oh, wow. That's great. 16
that's
weeks.
incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no way you could buy a house in that short of time.
Not and build one.
No, not like,
and you can put that on a mortgage too. Like you can get a loan for that. People must want.
There's groups that will finance it for you. Yeah. Okay. And, we've spoken to a few different groups. It's a specialty kind of a loan because it's not a traditional home, but there are groups that will help buyers looking to finance them, which is awesome.
Yeah, that's great. Awesome. And anybody with an existing house could put it as an addition or in their backyard. Yeah. And basically the rent would cover that incremental upside on their increase in their mortgage for sure.
I think it's a super interesting use case.
Yeah, I've crunched the numbers on that one.
Yeah, we've already been to, we knew you were coming in and we've been talking about it.
When somebody asked me about it, I crunched the numbers on him to try and figure out, how much you'd have to rent it for to cover the mortgage costs. It's just not that much.
No, it shouldn't be. And, again, I think the question is always, where do you live? And how's the municipality going to respond to this product in that particular, piece of land or project? So that's always the variable.
So it's basically electrical, plumbing.
You need wastewater electric. Got it.
Wastewater electric. Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if, you could, if it was, how it gets put in, if it was on some type of stilt or concrete or could be on some type of wheel, it'd be a not permanent structure.
Yeah, that's 100%. So
don't let me up just over loophole.
Listen, we sell the thing and then it's on the buyer.
You do whatever you want after that.
I will tell you that, again, we're built in factory, all certified, and we do have certifications to qualify as an RV or a park model home, which means, again, it gets built on a trailer. We drive it to property. Yeah. It can be, therefore, left, jacked up on a trailer.
Right.
Oh, it's built on a trailer. So it's on wheels like a trailer.
Yeah, it is.
That's great.
Right?
Yeah, no, that's
this
nice.
Is what I'm thinking about here now.
And then it can be certainly taken off the trailer.
Yes,
so it really
but you don't
depends
have to.
You don't have to. And there's so much flexibility. So like I said, you could leave it jacked up on a trailer, install some nice skirting around it so someone knows it's on a trailer, and then it's, as temporary as it could be. I mean, at that point, if you want to pick it up and take it somewhere else, there's nothing stopping you from doing
it. Coachella.
Hey. Don't laugh. We've talked about that. We're like, should these be a music festival?
I was like, fuck staying in a tent.
Although, did you see it? Did you see that Coachella's not selling out? There's
Really?
Yeah.
They're having trouble.
I'm not a music festival person anyways. The last thing I want to do is go hang out in a
guy's
field.
Hucking Fire Festival again?
No.
Yeah. He's out of jail, Hucking Fire Festival.
Oh my gosh.
Not crazy.
Like the same thing, and he's like, trust me this time around.
Yeah, he's like, trust me. Exactly. He's like, trust me this time around.
No. Oh man, I almost was on a plane to go to Fire Festival.
Oh really?
Wow.
Yeah, but then I used my brain and I was like, this is not a thing.
No. Oh my god, watching that whole thing unfold in real time on Twitter when people were posting, this is the meal we got with this little slice of cheese. I was like, Twitter is not really what it used to be, but even then, watching something like that unfold in real time was just. You're just sitting there laughing at your phone, refresh, what's next?
Well, I just remember, we got an email, a friend of mine and I, free tickets to this thing, and, he's, explaining it, and I was like, this sounds too good to be true, and usually when that alarm bell goes off, it means something's right.
Like, no, this is not...
But yeah, so, back to the idea of it being temporary, it absolutely can be utilized in that way. Likewise, it can be installed on, packed gravel pad, concrete pad. You can do all sorts of different things from a foundation standpoint, but you don't have to build underground. So lots of flexibility.
Yeah, amazing. So the growth of your business is basically going to come from these two main verticals.
Yeah, so again, we started really as a wellness experience immersed in nature. And that's what we are at our core. Selling our homes to us is completely aligned with that vision because we're giving more people the opportunity to do that in any way they see fit, right? So that's really how we envision continuing to grow through these two different but related businesses. Yeah.
So after your stint at the radio station in Chicago,
no one knows that. I was 15. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's call it my stint at the sports radio station.
Then where did you end up?
You want to take me all the way back?
Yeah, we're going back in time here.
All right, let's do it. So I grew up in Chicago, as I mentioned, born and raised. I went to summer camp. It was through going to summer camp that I actually started my friendship and love for Canadians in Canada.
Great.
Actually, so it all kind of ties together. When I started working at that camp, I was paired with a co-counselor who was this girl from Vancouver. And she had just finished her first year at McGill, and I was still in high school. And so I was entering my final year of high school, that year where you apply to schools, etc. I had, the list of schools that I had always thought I was going to go to growing up, which were all in the U.S. because that's where I grew up. But I went to visit Montreal in September, and I went and stayed with this girlfriend of mine. She's now one of my closest friends. And I was like, whoa. Montreal, what an amazing place. And so sort of on a whim, in addition to my other college applications, I was like, I'm going to apply to that place. And long story short, I ended up getting into what I had thought was my dream school in the U.S., accepted, and then found out I got into McGill. And I remember looking at my mom being like, I made the wrong choice. And she was like, I am sure there are other people that would happily take your place at that other school. If you want to go to McGill, you should go to McGill.
Wow.
And so I did.
Amazing.
So I went to McGill. I studied East Asian Studies and business. Worked in finance after McGill in a consulting firm. Was based in New York. Did a lot of my project work in Asia. So lived in Shanghai, Bangkok, lived in Delhi. Spent about a year working in India. And then left consulting. It was a lot. Left consulting, moved out to Mountain View, worked at Google for a bit.
Cool.
Got my MBA, and then moved out to South Korea, where I worked for Samsung for 3.5 years.
You were
journey.
lived in South Korea for 3 years.
Yeah. Lived in Seoul. Awesome city. If you ever have the chance to visit,
I have no idea what that city's like.
I would like to go.
Yeah.
Go. It's great. But it was at that time I'd been in Seoul for about 3.5 years. I knew that I wasn't going to live forever in Korea, although I did really like it. But there's very much a ceiling if you don't have fluency in Korean, in terms of what you can accomplish there. So that was when Alan Gardner, who was the founder of Tokyo Smoke, he had been a colleague of mine, that first gig that I worked at after McGill, which was in finance consulting. And he also worked with me at Google. So we had been very close friends and colleagues for a long time. And he called me up. He's like, you got to be thinking about leaving Korea. I'm like, yeah. He's like, do you want to come and do this thing where we start a cannabis brand? And I was like, yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Cool.
And so I looked at my now husband. At the time, we had just gotten married. And our plan was actually to move to India. So my husband grew up in Delhi. And so that had been our plan.
Is that where you met your husband?
It's another good story. I did meet him in Delhi. We worked at the same consulting firm. I was in the New York office. He was in the London office. But we were both sent to India for that project.
Wow.
But we were totally platonic friends. Years later, we coincidentally wound up at the same business school.
Oh, cool.
And that's actually when we started
fate,
dating.
Total fate.
Yeah, right? I believe in fate a bit.
Well, completely unplanned.
And what I like to say is, life is always a funny journey. But had I not lived and worked in India for that year, I don't know that I would have been fully prepared and equipped for, immersing myself in a family that's very proud of their Indian culture.
Right.
I understood it so much better, having had lived there and developed friendships. So I think it was totally fortuitous. I needed to have that experience and exposure in India on my own to then, sort of later in life, be able to feel like I could be a good present partner to someone.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
And they're all still there? His family?
So his parents are still there. So we actually spend as much time as we can over winter break in India every year with our kids. So I just got back from being there. I literally landed and went straight to IDS, which is why I have, like I said, 75% of my voice right now. So his parents are still there, and then he's got a big, close, extended family of aunts, uncles, cousins, and their kids. Cool. Yeah, have you guys been to India?
I haven't.
So a couple
we're creating a whole travel itinerary for you guys.
Yeah, you really
I'll be your guide.
Yeah,
Let's go to
I'm
Seoul,
loving
let's go to
this.
Delhi.
Sounds good.
Let's do it. Yeah, so that's, I think this all started by
beautiful.
what happened after high school. So that's what happened after high school.
Yeah. Oh, I love it.
What a path.
Yeah.
I
it's
mean,
really
a lot of that
exciting.
stuff you really couldn't plan. Even, I mean, a couple of years prior to going to McGill, you'd have no idea that whole trajectory would never be in the plan at all.
Yeah, I think that's right. It's easier to reflect looking backwards than it is in the moment. But I think the way that everything transpired, I'm very fortunate. But I led with, what am I passionate about? What are the things that I'm interested in? How can I make something that I want to happen? So I was really intent on spending as much time seeing other cultures, immersing myself in other cultures, working in other cultures, just to get that understanding. And that's really what I spent my 20s doing. And again, I think had I not done that, I wouldn't be where I am now. And it's such a wonderful skill to be able to, again, immerse yourself in a different, place and different environment.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Arcana sounds unbelievable. I'm excited to see them in person. I've seen them on your site, but Arhome looks amazing too.
Now,
It's
so
beautiful.
you saw them.
I've seen them, but I haven't stayed there. And I was going to ask, what's next?
with Arcana?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like I said, we are really focused on scaling this. That's really, first and foremost what we set out to do and what we will do. So for us, it's now building a bigger property. I think for us, the target would be 35 cabins plus. I think 35 to 50 is the sweet spot. And we want to do that in as many places as we can. So that's what we're working on. And at the same time, having our home available for individuals to, do what you guys maybe are thinking of doing, but also to people who, own land and have commercial operations that they would benefit from having accommodations. Like vineyards is like a really interesting and obvious example. Like there's so many vineyards in Ontario that are like hard to get to, and there's not great options for where to stay around them. So there's so many applications, but we're exploring all of those. Like we like growth.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Amazing.
Amazing. Super excited to see it, and thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah,
Thank you.
It's been great.